So finally I can do a review on my 21 Assault 850 146 Matryx chassis. I finally put about, I think, 1,200 miles on it, so it'd be right around the 2,000 kilometer mark. I've rode groove trails with good snow. I've rode some trails that were with good snow, but it was a little icy from the groomer packing it down, getting warm and cold. I've rode some off trail now. I've rode in about 2 to 3 feet of decent snow off trail. And so now I get a good feel for the sled and a good idea of how to give my review on it. So my old sled, if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, which you should, was a 2017 XCR 800. And then before that I rode Skidoo, so I was basically Skidoo right up till 17. And then I rode the Polaris, loved the 17 XCR, didn't think it'd get any better. And then I bought this one. I kind of got a pretty decent deal on it, and then I ended up selling my XCR. As soon as I bought this, I put my XCR for sale, and it sold within, I think it was 5 days or something, so that was good. So this sled here, my XCR was a 121, 146, so I can't really compare it to that sled. So this is kind of on its own, but I wouldn't go back, let's put it that way. I'm going to stick with this. I can't really see going down track size because I didn't really notice this 146 at all, except for when I was in the deep snow and how good it was. So I'll start off with, I guess, the power on this. The 850, that I can compare, I guess, against the 800. Is the 850, it seems a little smoother, I find. I don't know, it's hard to explain. It just feels like a smoother power. It definitely has more power. This sled has more top end than my XCR did, but I think those XCRs are geared a little lower than this thing. Even though this has a 146, I think I did just over 100 mile an hour with it, and that wasn't holding it too long. That was just for a little bit. So the motor, the 850, this is the first 850 Polaris I rode. I rode the Skidoos, a couple Skidoo 850s before this, but this was the first Polaris 850 I rode, and lots of power, super smooth. So definitely 100% on the motor on this thing. Obviously, it's going to be 850s from now on, but I wouldn't go back to the 800. Now for, let's say, suspension on this. It definitely rides smoother than my XCR did, but you're also talking, I think the longer track definitely helps with the ass end. The front end, I mean, the XCR rides a little stiffer, for sure. But the suspension on this machine here really works well. I did have to adjust it. I did buy it used, so the guy before me said he just mainly trail rode it, not really even that aggressive. So he had it pretty soft. So all I had to do was adjust the shocks, a couple clicks here and there. I played with it a bit depending on the trail conditions. I got it pretty much figured out where I want it right now. Now I did get to do quite a few miles on trail with this thing. So different, like I said, rode some really rough mogul trails, some real tight windy trails, really loose. So one day the snow it was about 38, 40 degrees, the sun was out, so the snow was getting soft. I rode in the really hard packed where I probably should have had scratchers. I don't have any on this, but it was only the one for half a day, maybe early in the morning when I needed it, and it was good. One thing I forgot to mention to you guys, this thing has the 2-inch track on it. So I'm not even those studs in this thing. And I didn't really notice I needed it. So as it goes for the 146, some guys, like I was even worried myself about it pushing in the corners. And I didn't find that at all. Like this thing, I can't believe how well it handles on the trail. It actually surprised me. I did have to put some new carbides on the skis. The snow conditions were pretty shitty this year, and I rode Michigan a couple times, and it took its toll. So once I put the new carbides on, this thing worked great, and even in the corners where it was slick, like with no studs, this thing was hooking up pretty good. Digs nice for just as the trail riding part of it, and yeah. As for pushing, I don't find it. Maybe some guys do. I don't really find this thing pushes at all. Like it's when the snow is soft a little bit, but I think everybody, it's just your carbides aren't digging in. So other than that, for the trail, this sled it works good, just as good as some of the other machines. It's probably going to ride a little stiffer than I know the Matryx, the VR1. It's got softer shocks on it for trail riding. It's mainly all they're made for. So what I mainly bought this for was to get off trail and play in some deep snow, which we didn't have hardly any of that this year. And I didn't go far enough north first part of winter, and I think even way up in like Cochrane area. I know the UP got a bunch of good snow way up there. But you got, from where I'm at, I got to drive, to give you an idea, just to get into the UP, we're about 6-hour drive. I just went to Bancroft with this thing. That was a 6.5 hour by the time you get to the cottage. So it's a lot of driving. If we live down south, it sucks living down here because we have to drive a long ways for snow, especially this winter. So anyways, I did get to try this in some decent snow this last weekend. And the 2-inch paddle, I was almost going to cut it down, but I told myself I'm going to try it this year before I cut the track down. And I'm glad I didn't cut the lugs down because this thing works good in pretty much any snow conditions, the way it hooks. And then once you get it off trail, I could pretty much, I mean, I wasn't in crazy deep snow. Like I said, 2 to 3 feet. But I could stop anywhere and hammer the throttle and just walk out of it without even an issue. And then if I wanted to stop and just throw it on the side, do a quick U-turn in the deep snow, no problem. Climbed a few good hills with the power lines with it. It just basically wants to wheelie up the hill. So as for off trail, this thing, and I've always liked to believe in my XCR. These sleds I find for if you really want to lean and carve and do some deep snow maneuvering and side hilling on hills, these Polarises I find are a lot easier to do that with than a Skidoo. Just my opinion. And that's mainly why I'm still riding this Polaris, even though I had some issues with this. I still have issues. The recall, they messed up the fuel gauge on it, so it's got to go back for that. So they're hour and 20-minute drive for me. But I'm going to deal with it, and I'm going to keep riding one of these. I might sell this one just because I want to get a new one. This does have 2,600 miles on it now, and no issues. This thing had no issues with it until I brought it in for the recall, and so the fuel gauge don't work now. And then whatever they did, I don't know if they unplugged something or what happened, but my hand warmers only work if I turn the temperature up all the way in the gauge and have it on high. Other than that, they don't work. And even on high, they're still just enough to keep your hands warm if it's really cold out. So that's the only issues this thing's had, and it was from the dealer for bringing it in for the recall. Because other than that, it was perfect. This thing would have been no problems. I did change the belt because when I bought it, didn't have a spare, and the guy said it was original belt. I think it had 1,100 miles on it when I bought it, something like that, maybe a little less. So I bought a spare belt just because I put the new one on, and the old one is just my spare now. So other than that, I don't know how long the belts last on these. So this one's got over 1,000 miles on it, and no issues with the belt, and I'm pretty hard on it. So yeah, guys, my overall review on this thing. If you're considering an assault, let's say you're riding an XCR, or you're on a Skidoo XRS, you're on a 121 or 129 Polaris, and you're just thinking maybe I should try the longer track, but you're worried about it pushing too much. For me, I didn't notice this track at all. This thing could have been a 137 or 129. I wouldn't notice the difference with this. I know it does cup up in the back. It rolls up a bit in the back rails. So the complete track, when you're on a flat, hard trail, it's not riding on the whole 146. But so like I said, if you're considering one of these things, an assault, I'm going to keep riding these now for now on until they change up something, or maybe Skidoo comes out with something better. And the only reason I would switch to Skidoo is for any warranty work or recall issues. My dealer's 20 minutes away compared to an hour and 20 to an hour and 40 minutes for Polaris. But if a Polaris dealer, someone in Windsor area or Essex County gets a Polaris dealer, I'll just keep riding these. I have no issues with them. I just like the way they handle compared to the Skidoo myself. So yeah, guys, if you're thinking of an assault, I highly recommend it. And I got the 7S on this one, which also that's what I would go with. I'll never have another sled without this thing on it. It's so nice when you can, even when you're ripping down a trail and you want to get off trail, you see a nice, like a old road or logging road or something that veers through the trees, you can hop on it and you can look down and it's so nice to have. And then if other guys have it, you link the other people's machines to it. You can see where they're at, if they're stopped, what's going on. So for mountain riding, I think the 7S is almost a safety issue too. It'd be so nice to have that. You can see everybody where everybody's at. Or if you're in a big off-trail area in a bush, You can see where everybody's at. So I'll never get another one of these Polaris without the 7S. That's 100%. And yeah, my final thoughts are going to be, if you're thinking about buying one of these, I highly recommend it. I don't think you'd be disappointed. If you're not doing a lot of off-trail, I would probably get a little less of a track on it. But I'm going to keep the 2-inch lug because it hooks up good. And I hit a couple rocks when I was climbing up the one set of power lines, and I could feel the track hit the rocks and grind off them, and this track held up. And even riding in Michigan, the snow was low, and when we got off trail and hammered it a bit, it would hit the ground and the dirt, and all the lugs are still perfect. With 2,600 miles on it, so that's pretty good. So I'm going to keep running the 2-inch myself, but for someone that does more trail, like say maybe you do 75 on trail, 25 off, then I would say go with a little less of a track and maybe stud it. But for me, I'm going with the 2-inch. I'm going to keep it. It hooks up amazing. I pretty much I found some pretty good climbs, and I wouldn't second guess taking this up it. I would take this in some pretty serious hills and deep snow with this 2-inch track. Clutching works really well on this. You can just be stopped there. Like I had to wheelie over a river, and you can be dead stop, hit the throttle on this thing, and it's instant wheelie on command, which is what you want when you're off trail riding. So I wouldn't touch the clutch. Some guys do. I mean, if you go higher elevation, I guess you got to play with the weights in them. But for the ride I do mainly, I'm not gonna have to worry about that. And yeah, guys, if you're watching this video because you're like maybe thinking about buying one of these machines, I highly recommend it. I don't think you'd be disappointed at all. So let's put it this way: if you buy one of these and you're not happy with it, definitely comment on my video and say whatever you want to say, because I don't think I'll have one negative comment about how nice these machines are. I mean, some guys you see these new Polaris are breaking, but like I said, 2,600 miles on this. Starts up every time, runs perfect, doesn't burn a decent amount of oil. I don't know, the fuel, everybody driving with Skidoos and 600, 800s, 850s, and everybody puts in within the same kind of money almost every time we stop. Depends, some of us were playing off trail more, we put a little more gas in, but it's not really any different than other machines on gas, even with the longer track. So yeah, guys, definitely would go with an install. If you're watching this and thinking about buying one, pull the trigger on one. I highly recommend it. Oh yeah, guys, and one more thing, which I was pretty worried about too, which I definitely got to mention because some people I've seen a lot of questions about this with the 2-inch track and temperatures on trail. So when I was there was lots of snow, but it got warm and cold, and the groomer went down at night, so they kind of froze up, and we were the first tracks on the trail. So it was pretty icy, but they were still getting a lot of snow dust, and like the skids had snow in them, but not a lot. Like the snow was really hard. That's probably the iciest I rode in on a groomed trail. And for one thing, this track hooked up amazing in that kind of condition. And the other thing is the temperature everybody worries about. So I was running, I think the hottest I've seen, and that was on a long straightaway, I think it was 158. Which I looked, and apparently that's not that high. There's obviously, this thing's got a temperature, I think it shuts down when the temp light and everything comes on. And you got your 7S has all the stuff on it. So that was the hottest it got, and I rode it for this far. Obviously, when you're riding in good snow trails and everything, I'd run like 98, I think. And then if I was in just a freshly groomed trail with good snow, not too bad, just nice, perfectly hard packed trail with good snow, I would be I'd see 115, 118 sometimes. And then, but other than that, if you're riding on a trail that's already had a bunch of tracks down it and the snow's worked up good, I'd run 98 all the time with this 2-inch paddle. So if you're running even less of a track, like say 1.5 inches, a little bigger than 1.5 inches, you're probably not going to have to worry about your temps at all. As long as you're riding on some sort of snow, not just ice. So I definitely had to mention that part of it because it was a concern of mine when I bought it about having the 2-inch track. So if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button on the bottom of your screen, and thanks for watching.